let's talk about reading biography. Lots of book clubs read exclusively fiction, but I'd like to suggest that you and your book club think about reading some biographies. Biography is still a story with characters, but it's always a story about a real person who had an interesting life. And I often find that when I read biography, I take away from it more insights about fate and time and human nature and history and art and life's biggest questions than I do when I read a work of fiction. Today I'd like to share with you 4 of my favorite biographies and tell you why I enjoyed them. Roxana Robinson's life of Georgia O'Keeffe is one of my favorite biographies. It was one of the first biographies I read as my reading tastes began to shift a little bit more from fiction to nonfiction over the past 10 years or so. And it really turned me on to biography in general because, first of all, Robinson is a real writer. A lot of times when you read a biography, particularly a celebrity biography or a biography of someone who's famous today, you'll find that the writing quality itself isn't necessarily that great. But Robinson is a true writer. She's also known for her fiction. So you know as soon as you sit down and open this biography of O'Keeffe that you're in good hands and that O'Keeffe's story is going to be told thoroughly and interestingly and in very readable, beautiful prose. I learned a lot about O'Keeffe from reading this book, and it was fascinating to trace the trajectory of her life as an artist. So this is one of my top picks for biography for book clubs as well. Another favorite biography of mine is this one about Harriet Beecher Stowe, written by Joan D. Hedrick. Stowe is a really important figure, of course, in American history as well as American literature because she's the author of the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is said to have had some influence on the start of the Civil War. But there's so much more to Stowe and to her life than simply being the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin. I learned a lot about her from this book, and especially about her life as a writer. We who are writers are often curious about what other writers' lives were like, and it's really interesting to me how Stowe, as a mother and a writer, really struggled with the same balance of issues that other writers who are women in particular still struggle with today. This is also a really well-written biography, and Hedrick is a Pulitzer Prize winner. So you know once again that when you sit down to read this biography, you're in good hands. This dual biography of Louisa May Alcott and her father Bronson, called Eden's Outcasts by John Madison, is also a really interesting read, and like the Harriet Beecher Stowe biography, a Pulitzer Prize winner. So once again, you know that you're going to be reading a biography that's well crafted, well researched, and well written. It's really fascinating to read this dual biography of Alcott and her father because her father had such an influence on her career as well as, of course, on her life. And here's what's on my nightstand now, a biography of Margaret Fuller by Megan Marshall, also a Pulitzer Prize finalist, so once again, a well-researched, well-crafted biography. Margaret Fuller is perhaps a lesser-known figure in 19th century America, but a really important one. She was a woman who was educated to an unusual degree by her father, but then sort of left at odds because she didn't know how to use that education. At that time, she was watching all of her male contemporaries go to Harvard University where she wasn't allowed to go, and it was really hard for her to find an outlet for her intellect. So I'm only about a third of the way through this book right now, but I'm really enjoying it, and again, can already recommend it to book clubs. You may have noticed there's a little bit of a bias in the biographies that I've chosen to read. I'm especially interested in American women artists of the 19th and early 20th century, but that's just my reading taste. There are biographies, obviously, of all kinds of interesting figures from history and literature and politics and celebrity. I'll leave a couple of links below for those of you whose reading tastes tend to be different than mine, but who might still be interested in finding a good biography to read. One last piece of advice I'll leave you with for choosing a good biography to read with your book club is to pay attention to who the writer is, not just who the subject of the biography is. Be careful about the books that publishers throw out there on the marketplace quickly because somebody is a celebrity or somebody's in the news and they know they can make a quick buck on it. Look instead for the biographies that have won some kind of prestigious prize like the Pulitzer, or for authors who have other biographies or other even novels to their credit like Roxana Robinson does. Pay attention to who wrote the biography because then you'll know that you have something deep and rich and worthwhile to read and talk about with your book club. Read on!